Okay, I want to talk about two things today, and actually, we're going to go in depth into both of them a little more for the Broncos About Bratwurst podcast on Friday. But they've been really on my mind, and I wanted to get them while they're fresh. First of all, I want to talk about the combine and what the Broncos are doing differently than just about every team in the NFL this year, aside from the LA Rams, and actually a little more LA Rams ideas that I have that I think could happen, might happen, and could make some sense. Now, a little more that I dig into LA. I'm starting to lean a little bit away from my bold prediction, but I'm still going to stick with it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I do want to talk about, again, Vic Fangio's flying or already in Indianapolis for the combine. First of all, why is it in Indy, I wonder? I don't really know why that works or how that works. But I read a great article, I think it was last year, I believe it was by ESPN, about the good old boys clubs in at the combine and how this is really where a lot of things happen, a lot of news breaks, a lot of good old friends get together and chat at certain pubs or, certain clubs or whatever. And Vic Fangio is practically going by himself. He's kept most of his staff at home. He's going to let them watch film. He's going to let them watch the interviews, whatever, on TV, just like any other fan. I'm sure Vic Fangio will send them extra tape. I'm sure he has other people along to do interviews, etc. But it's a really interesting idea, and it's something that MileHighReport.com has written about several times, and I think and they've covered it well. It's an interesting thought that Vic Fangio, first of all, people think of him as being this old-fashioned coach, this old man who thinks like an old guy and isn't going to be able to, be up there with guys like Sean McVay in this young youth movement of coaches. Now, I think to see that that Fangio, along with McVay, are the only two that are not sending most of their staff to Indy, I think that's an interesting idea. And it shows that Vic Fangio is willing to do something different, to make some changes, to say, hey, look, we don't always have to do what we've always done. Now, maybe these assistant coaches and scouts, et cetera, want to be there because it sounds like it's kind of a good time. You go and you watch some players run, you do a couple interviews, and then you go and have a few beers with your good buddies from the other teams. And one of the rumors is that the reason Vic Fangio is doing this is because he doesn't want a lot of rumors spreading. He doesn't want some of his coaches spilling the beans. Now, it's not necessarily that he doesn't trust his coaching staff. I think it's just seriously that when you get all these guys together who are friends, they've known each other for years and years, and they're sitting together at some steakhouse with 10 beers, something just might spill. Something about, what their ideas are for the draft, what players they like in free agency. And I can see that being a little bit of a danger. Now, on the other hand, it's pretty widely accepted, I should say, and wildly, I suppose, that it's not really that necessary to be at the combine. You don't need that many people. It's a bit of a show. There's a lot of things that you don't learn. People think you learn, but it's really become more of a way for ESPN and the like to make money than it is for coaches to really get to learn something. A lot of these guys are learning things through the Senior Bowl, through these games, through tape. They're going to meet these players. They're having them work out for them individually. And so the combine is it's kind of this base. It's kind of the start where you get a really basic idea of the numbers. But in the end, do you need to be there to watch the numbers? It's all televised anyway. The numbers are all posted online. Why should the entire coaching staff be there? And I think Vic Fangio is really smart in saying, hey, look, I think we have a better ways for my staff to spend their time. And so Fangio is going to go probably with a couple other coaches and everyone else is going to stay home. And I think that's really smart. I think it's really cool to see this old guy, this guy who loves Hallmark Christmas movies, that he's willing to change a little, to adapt a little, to be young and fresh, even though his age isn't. And I think that that's what we need to see from Fangio, that he needs to maybe be a little more relatable, a little better, even with the media. I think he needs to, show that he's able to run a team that is aggressive. Now, I think that he kind of threw Rich Scangarello under the bus as not being aggressive enough, and that's why he fired him. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but anyway, Scangarello took the fall. Now Fangio has a chance to say, hey, look, okay, now I've got my guy. I've got Pat Shurmur. Now we can run with it. And now he's going to have to show that his team, his offense, and his defense are in it to win it. They're aggressive, and they're hearing what their coach is saying, and they're picking up what he's putting down. And that's so important in this league, that you have not just a coach who can call the game, not just the guy who can call plays, but a guy who can connect with his players, a guy who his players want to fight and die for this guy. And I think he needs to possibly work on that a little bit. I mean, there are at least enough rumors last year that he was rubbing people the wrong way, and you can't make everybody happy, of course. But I think it's a nice thing to see that he's willing to shake things up a little bit and not send his staff to Indy. And I think it's him again, like we talked about in Broncos Bratwurst last week, that he's playing a little bit of chess. You know, he and Shermer, they want to, you know, use this time wisely, and they want to do everything they possibly can, obviously, to be the best team, and they don't have to just do what they've always done. Now, my second take of the day, and I mentioned this again in the last week's podcast as well, Broncos Bratwurst will be podcasted on Friday. You can check that out, obviously, here on YouTube. It'll also be published on milehighreport.com alongside an article. I mentioned last week that I think Tom Brady could end up somewhere that no one is really mentioning. Now, I've looked into it a little bit more. I looked at cap space. I've looked at, you know, who's on the roster. And I'm not entirely sure anymore that the LA Rams make a ton of sense. But I do think they should be mentioned. I do think that someone would pay for Jared Goff. Someone would trade for him if it's Indy or if it's Tampa or whoever. And if that's the case, you know, obviously you free up space in, you know, on the roster and in the pocketbook for Tom Brady. Now, the issue is that their biggest problem last year was the offensive line. Now, Tom Brady isn't going to probably be that, you know, optimistic if he's playing behind a bad offensive line, but he's also a very, very smart quarterback who, though he is obviously going downhill in terms of physical play and physical ability, he's extremely smart, he's extremely crafty in the pocket, and I think he would immediately be a boost over Jared Goff. I am not a Jared Goff fan. I've never been. Can't imagine why they decided to give him that huge contract. I think it could work, and I think that the reason I really think it's possible is, for one, it makes sense for Tom Brady. Brady wants to be somewhere with his brand. He wants to be cool. He wants to show that, hey, look, I've been in New England all this time. Now I'm going to go somewhere and finish off my career that's kind of sexy. He's not going to Tennessee. He's not going to Vegas. LA makes sense. And I don't know about the Chargers. I think the Chargers, they don't have a fan base. They don't have great ownership. I mean, they're just a mess. Why would you go to the Chargers? The team is decent, but that's it. So I think it makes sense that he goes to the LA Rams in terms of just simply he's going to LA. Makes sense for him, makes sense for his wife, and it makes sense for his future after football. Now, does it make sense, you know, actually, you know, football-wise on the field? I think that the Rams could take a chance on him. Goff is not a big name. He's not a guy who's going to win you a lot of games on his own. Maybe Brady's not either, but he's at least a name. And Kroenke, the owner of the Avalanche and the Nuggets, and, of course, the LA Rams, he's getting ready to open up this, I don't even know, couple $1 billion stadium in LA. He needs somebody to fill those seats. He needs to make money. He needs to start out with a splash. Jared Goff isn't the guy. Why did they sign him? I don't know. But Tom Brady's got the name. He's going to sell jerseys. He's going to probably have at least a little more success than Jared Goff. He's got players around him. You know, he's got Kupp, he's got Woods, he's got Higbee at tight end, Gurley if he's healthy. So there is talent there. And I think I could see it working. Now, the first step obviously would be they'd have to trade Jared Goff. And I mean, Tom Brady would have to show interest, but I think there could be interest on his side, and I think it would make sense on the LA side. So don't think that's impossible. Not saying it's going to happen. I still think most likely he actually goes back to New England, but LA Rams are absolutely a team we should watch out for with Tom Brady and his upcoming free agency. It's going to be a crazy, crazy free agency here in a few weeks because there are some big names out there, and nobody knows who's going where. So once one brick falls, they're all going to fall, and I cannot wait to see where that ends up. So, you've been listening to The Footballologist. I'm Kevin Gillikin. We'll be back for more whenever news breaks or whenever I feel like posting a video. Until then, peace.